Welcome to Girl Bossing Under Duress, the podcast where we empower marginalized voices to reclaim their power and build meaningful, fulfilling lives in a world that often works against us. Each week, we dive deep into conversations on health, wellness, culture, and career development. Everything you need to thrive as a girl boss under duress in today's challenging landscape. I'm your host, Thembi Matroshe, a certified life coach and wellness advocate, here to guide you through this journey of resilience and empowerment. Welcome to today's episode of the GBUD Podcast. I'm your host, Thembi Matroshe, and I am so excited to delve into a topic that I'm sure many of you have thought about, whether you're a creative or someone navigating an ever-changing career landscape: career pivoting. Now, the world has changed dramatically, especially for creatives, and with challenges like COVID and technological disruption, it's become crucial to diversify and explore new career paths. Today, we'll unpack what it means to pivot, why it's often necessary, and how you can take practical steps to navigate this shift. I'll be sharing my own personal journey of career pivoting, from the arts and activism to government and policy, and my current transition into monitoring and evaluation. Let's explore how embracing change can lead to growth, opportunity, and a career that aligns with your evolving passions and values. So, if you've ever felt the need to transition, to explore a new path, or simply to find new purpose in your work, this episode is for you. As creatives, and really, if we're keeping it 100, as anyone in today's world and in the job market, it's absolutely important to diversify your skills and your experience. We hear this saying all the time: don't put all your eggs in one basket. I especially learned this firsthand at the SA Cultural Observatory Conference that was held a couple of years back. I attended this conference as someone working within the creative sector, and we were gathered to discuss how creatives could recover from the impacts of COVID-19. What stood out for me the most was the importance of harnessing technology for infiltrating other industries. So, for example, how could graphic design or animation intersect with industries like healthcare, construction, or even automotive? If you are frustrated with the current state of your industry, whether it's in the art world or beyond, I think it's time to start thinking about how you can pivot. Stay with me now. Let's look into how we can explore this in more depth. So, the first thing you would probably ask yourself is, why consider a career pivot? When it comes to pivoting, the biggest question is always why. Let me ask you a few questions. Are you dissatisfied with your career, or is it just your current job? Could a similar job in the same field bring you more satisfaction? Or is it the environment, your working conditions, that's causing the dissatisfaction? Do you feel that you're not using your skills and your talents to their full potential? Have you ever felt a growing lack of interest or energy for your work? If you are nodding along to any of these questions, I just think it might be time to consider pivoting before you're forced to do so by any industry changes. People who pivot proactively rather as reactionaries are more likely to be better positioned for success. So, what is a career pivot? Let's talk about it. Basically, a career pivot is a planned, purposeful shift in career direction. It could mean moving into a related field or transitioning to something completely different. Whatever the path, a pivot requires thoughtful planning, And we'll go over some of these steps that will help you get started. But first, let's get into how you can assess whether pivoting is correct for you. So, in one of my therapy sessions, I was having a little bit of a mental breakdown, mentee B, and it was about my career. Things were going a bit sideways, where I felt like everything was basically going pear-shaped. So, what did my therapist suggest while we were in the session, apart from providing me with tools to cope with my anxiety around the impending doom of what I was faced with at that particular time? We did a pestle analysis. So the session was 1 hour long. We couldn't dive deep into it, but she basically equipped me with this particular framework that I then ended up doing a 3-day deep dive by myself, analyzing my current context from a micro and a macro scale to assist me in knowing how I could move forward. So, what is a pestle analysis? Basically, a pestle analysis is what organizations use to analyze the external environment, but we can also use this as individuals. So, if you're feeling stuck or you're blaming yourself for your career dissatisfaction, this framework can provide some perspective for you. So let's do a quick breakdown of the pestle factors that can affect your career or your industry. Pestle stands for political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal. For political, we look at changes in government policies or trade regulations. For economic, we look at inflation, interest rates, unemployment levels. For social, we look at the cultural trends, shifts in lifestyle, consumer behavior. For technological, we look at advances in technology and new innovations. For the environmental, we look at climate change and regulations. For legal, we look at the laws that are impacting your field, as well as health and safety guidelines. So, when you take stock of these aspects, you will start to understand what's within your control and what's not. This will help you make better decisions for your next career move. So, I've told you what pestle stands for and what to look for when you are considering doing a pestle analysis. Now you need to set aside a few hours to really reflect. As I said, when I did my pestle analysis, it took days, and I kid you not, this is a deep dive. So it really depends on how far you want to take it. Give yourself the time that you think you'll need and add some time on top of that because it will probably not be enough. Then you jot down how each of these factors affect your current job and your industry. Then you look at both the big picture, which is the macro scale, and your immediate surroundings, which is the micro scale. You can then take it a step further. I'm giving you guys the tea here. You can then take it a step further by doing a SWOT analysis. So, SWOT analysis is looking at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. So, this SWOT analysis will assist you in not only looking at the context that you exist in, and not only looking at it on two levels, which is micro and macro, but also looking at it from a SWOT analysis perspective so that you know exactly where you stand with regards to these various factors. Now, let me share my journey. I started working in the creative sector. I worked in galleries and I was curating exhibitions. I did some independent work as a curator and I did formal work for galleries as well as other organizations. that were in the creative sector as well. So I dabbled between program coordinating, between curating actual shows, mentoring, as well as organizing festivals, events, and so on. All of this work was within the creative field. Then COVID hit, of course. We all have that monumental story around COVID and the impacts that it had on each of our careers, respectively. In my case, the economic impact on the arts was quite significant. I think it's one of the sectors that was hit really, really hard by COVID. And yeah, I think most South Africans who are within the creative sector might relate to the fact that establishments had to close, So, from a visual arts perspective, at that time, I was running a gallery in Maboneng, and that gallery could barely function because it was really hard to sell art and to have events and to do any sort of artistic engagements or interventions in the space. And we had to rely a lot on virtual events and virtual engagements. So you can imagine it was not an easy experience. So, what did I do in this space? Because obviously, I needed stability, I needed more opportunities, I needed a financial boost because things were not going as I had planned. Of course, I'm doing this retrospectively. I did not do a pestle analysis at this point. I had not been exposed to these tools, but when I reflect upon my journey, I can see that these career pivots that I've had were closely aligned with the tools that I have now. I just have a better way of articulating them. And I think I can better harness the tools that I have now because I know the frameworks. But we are looking at this from a retrospective perspective for now. So, what were my strengths in this particular situation? We've already unpacked what the context was. Let's say we were doing a pestle analysis here. So, what was happening? There was the COVID-19 pandemic, the economy was not doing well, people were feeling the pinch financially. So, obviously, no one was buying art, or let me say, maybe the elite were buying art, but like your emerging artists might not have been benefiting from this. So smaller galleries were not benefiting from this. And of course, there was a lockdown. Only essential work was allowed. So therefore, no events, no alcohol was sold. All of these factors contributed to how the gallery that I was working in at that time found itself. And then as a result, the situation I found myself in as an individual. So that was the context. And then now, what was the SWOT analysis of the situation? What were my strengths? I had diverse skills. I had the ability to organize events. I had my wow, it's such a long time ago. It's even hard to reflect. But coming out of university, I had my full education within art history, English literature, and media and writing. I also had a honors in curatorship. So the work I was doing at that time was curating exhibitions. But anyone who curates exhibitions will tell you that it's pretty much like project management, events organizing, and content creation, a little bit of marketing, stakeholder management for sure, because you liaise with artists, you liaise with clients. So, of course, there's sales there as well. It's a whole lot of skills that I acquired at that particular time. So, I had my qualifications, I had my skills. And I had a solid network. I had people who were that I was connected with who were working within policy spaces. Bear in mind, at this point in time, I was pursuing a master's in public heritage and cultural policy. So I was already interested in going into the policy space, but I was still teasing it out because I wanted to bridge the gap between the creative sector and public policy. So I was already operating in that space, but I don't think I knew that that's what my journey would lead me to. And of course, I had my advocacy career and activism career where I was quite vocal about issues. I had a thriving YouTube channel at the time where I would mostly do video essays discussing particular issues around intersectionality, culture, etc., etc. So everything that I had at that time, my skills, my talents, my resources, I had to pull them together. There were also weaknesses. So, of course, the creative sector had limited high paying opportunities. And as I did say, it was COVID. So, it was really, really hard to make a reasonable amount of money or even, a living wage at that particular time because things were so tight. It was basically about survival. So already you have the super elitist industry where you'll mostly make money at the end of your career. And secondly, you are faced with a pandemic that further restricts you from making money. So I think it was just not a good time for young people in the creative sector at all. And of course, there were some interventions that the government was attempting to do. But again, some of those fell by the wayside, and a lot of people barely scraped through. Now, what were the opportunities for me in this particular time? As I said, I was pursuing my master's in cultural policy, public heritage at the University of Witwatersrand. And combined with my activism, I then had the opportunity to pivot into stakeholder management, working on the inclusion of LGBTQIA plus people in the Gauteng province. So basically, I was responsible for making sure that we mainstream service delivery towards LGBTQIA plus people. And this included policy making, it included creating programs, it included contributing towards the communication that was sent out, how inclusive it was towards LGBTQIA plus people. There was a lot of work that we had to do, but just consider it as the merge between policy making as well as programming geared towards queer people within the Gauteng province. And I did that work for about 2 years. I had an amazing time and I really grew. I was challenged. I enjoyed myself. I felt, stretched to the max. And yeah, it was really a great opportunity, and I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity because it fostered my love for the governance space. It fostered my love for development, social development, economic development. And then, yeah, there came the threats. So 2 years into the job, the political came in. And this is why a pestle analysis is so important because you start to see the things that are way out of your control. But I still survived. I still thrived. This experience pushed me to pivot yet again. One thing about me, child, I will pivot. And I don't mind. Like, I really don't mind. I think what these past few years have taught me is it is so important to be resilient. It is so important to be adaptable and agile. If there's anything you take away from this podcast, take away that. Anyone with an understanding of working within governance and public administration will tell you that political shifts can have significant impacts on your work. An event such as a cabinet reshuffle can affect the entire trajectory of your career, such as in my case, where, due to such shifts, I transitioned from working with LGBTQIA plus stakeholders to having to contribute towards fostering the economic inclusion of designated groups such as women and youth within the new department. After 1 year of working at this department, I then segued into communications work, where I was responsible for the implementation of the integration and coordination of media relations activities, media monitoring and evaluation, as well as social media management. It was amazing. I had a lovely time, no complaints. And even there, I grew, I stretched, I was challenged. I just had a time. I had a time. So I guess triple majors are not a bad idea after all. If you are a humanities student, it really, really widens your options. I would also just throw that in there if you are a humanities student out there, or maybe you are in grade 11 or matric and you are considering courses. So, yeah, think about multiple majors. It might be tough at the time, but it really is worth it. Trust me. So, why should you care about pivoting? Because I've told you my story. I've told you why I pivoted, what happened in my situation that caused me to pivot. But now maybe you need to start thinking about why you should pivot. If you're feeling burnt out or dejected, it's easy to think that working is just a necessary evil in our capitalist world. Of course, this is girl bossing under duress. Why wouldn't it be? But I think we need to look at this from a different lens, one that's informed by socialist, feminist, and black liberation ideas. So stay with me. This is a new framework, or maybe it's not, but it's a new framework to me. I was workshopping it with my partner. She lectures politics and philosophy, so I really enjoyed the fact that she indulged me on this one. While liberal feminists advocate for individual freedom, socialist feminism pushes for collective liberation, particularly for marginalized people. So, in a capitalist neoliberal society like ours, there is still space to imagine how we work. It's pretty much a sliding scale. Whether you want to advocate for fair compensation or creating safe spaces for other women, it's all connected. My point is, think of your career as a space where you can create change, not just for yourself, but for others too. So if you so happen to be a black woman who is climbing the ladder in whatever field you are in, trailblazing in your field, in your career, lift as you rise. Create opportunities where opportunities have been created for you. When your name is mentioned or put forward someone else's name. I think that if we are going to work and we are going to participate in this capitalistic society, and we want to reimagine how we do so, and we want to extract the most value for our lives in this capitalistic society, having a more community centered approach might just be more fulfilling. I don't know. I'm just saying, but we'll see. So we've moved on from that framework, and also thinking about it from a black liberation perspective is to say, cool, in South Africa in particular, we had apartheid that influenced the way the economy is set up from a white monopoly capitalist perspective. Now, certain freedoms have been granted to black people. We can vote, we have rights, there's BEE, there's all sorts of things that grant black people certain freedoms and are meant to ensure access to the means of production. So now how do we take it just a step further? How do we, as black people, black women, black queer people, all sorts of people who are marginalized in some way or another, how do we make this work for us? And how do we liberate ourselves collectively in that process. Just food for thought. Let's talk about how to execute a career pivot, because now you're all clued up, child. I've told you my business. I've told you why you should care about this. And I think now we need to talk about how to do this. If you're still with me, let's talk about how to do this. If you know me and if you read my newsletter, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of goal setting. So you would have to, because we are in September now, we only have about 4 months left of the year. September, October, November, December. Yeah. So you basically have 4 months left of this year. And in order to execute this plan, you'd have to divide the rest of the year into a 4-week action plan. So 1 week per month. You start with your main goal and then you work backwards. You create smaller tasks to hold yourself accountable. How do you begin? You need to do your market research. So basically, you need to look up industries that align with your skills and which ones are predicted to grow. Then expand your network. Let's look beyond LinkedIn. Let's look into other forums like Reddit that have industry specific communities where you can learn and connect. I know, Facebook is old news, but hey, it gets the job done. That's where people are at, that's where people speak. So look into these community forums and pages and online spaces where people gather, people who are in your field or your dream field. Then look into informational interviews. So you reach out to people in the fields that you are interested in and you ask for an interview. Then you attend conferences. Also, this doesn't have to be in chronological order, by the way, but anyway, let's keep going. You participate in industry conferences, even virtually. This is a great way to stay on top of trends. Then, mentorship. You seek out mentors or transition programs. These can guide you through the pivot process. And lastly, you craft your narrative. Be clear on why you're pivoting, what drives you, and how do your experiences add value. So, back to me, because you know I love speaking about myself. I'm a Leo rising and a Leo sun. If you are an astrology hun, you'll know what I'm talking about. So let's chat about my next career pivot. So I've recently completed my postgraduate diploma in monitoring and evaluation from the University of the Witwatersrand. This has been a huge step for me. Coming from a humanities background, I've had to push through some doubts, particularly around my analytical and quantitative skills. Child, public finance, analytical methods, also known as statistics, they put me through it. But I survived. That's the funny thing. Bear in mind, I have this theory that if you were not good at maths in high school, you probably would be better at it post the development of your prefrontal cortex. So basically, after you turn 25, check out that mathematics again. Just check it out. Let me know. I'm curious. But this is my personal theory. I really, really think that sometimes you were just not good at the thing because it caught you while you were too young. That's my philosophy on mathematics at the moment. So, I did that and I was so proud of myself. I took 2 years to complete the course, longer than I actually should have, because I was juggling work and life. And trust me, anyone who studies while working is a hero in my eyes. It is one of the most difficult things you can do. And then on top of that, add the fact that I was basically in a whole new arena. So I really pushed myself and I'm really proud of myself for that achievement. I really do not take it for granted. I don't take it lightly, and I'm always thankful for the support that I had while pursuing this qualification. I mean, it did kind of help to have a partner who is in that field as well, because she always would proofread my essays, she would give me pointers, etc., etc. So I guess community goes a long way, and make sure that you surround yourself with experts in that field. But as collab, um, actually we are there. What resources are available or am I tapping into during this transition? The first point that I am looking into is mentors, networking, and being willing to start from the ground up in this new industry. So for me, I am blessed and lucky enough to have access to individuals who already are experts in this field. The actual reason why I went into monitoring and evaluation academically is because I was surrounded by intelligent, older Black women who were in management positions in my workspace who were doing this work. And I just admired them. And I'm a huge believer in modeling. As an NLP certified life coach, I really believe in using modeling as one of the tools when you want to achieve something specifically career related. So I did use some of these women as a model for what I want to achieve in this current juncture of my career. So I actually have a coffee date with one of these powerful, intelligent women tomorrow. And I'm really looking forward to it because I'm seeking guidance and I'm seeking knowledge, wisdom, information, just to know what my next move should be at this point in time. I also think that it's important to not fall into the sunk cost fallacy. So when you are pivoting, sometimes you might have to start from the bottom. Not always, but you might. And I had to reconcile with this fact, and I had to be okay with that fact because it's a completely different field. Yes, I'm still operating within the governance space, but it's a different area, and I'm willing to start from the ground and work my way up. So with the sunk cost fallacy aspect, there was a point where I was lamenting the years that I spent in the creative sector. It's only now that I've reconciled the fact that those years were not wasted, but I actually had a moment of reflection when I attended an art event just yesterday. I was attending a gallery opening, or an exhibition opening rather, and I basically looked around the room and I thought to myself, had I stuck it through, I would be 7 years in the game as a creative practitioner, and I would basically be at a mid level, semi established, level. Apparently, it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert, or 10 years to be an expert. So, with that in mind, I would most likely be at a more senior level in the creative industry. But here's the kicker: based on all of the things that I had mentioned prior, the pestle that I mentioned, how things were going, I just did not have the mental, emotional, and psychological bandwidth to withstand that context at that time. So then I had to reconcile my feelings about the decision that I made to pivot, right? Because there were pros and cons. And I decided to go with governance because the pros outweighed the cons at that time. So all of this is to say I don't have sunk cost fallacy. And when I reflect on the years that I spent within the creative sector, I realize that they actually played a huge role in informing my career in governance and cultural policy. And now, going into monitoring and evaluation, being interested in change management, sustainability, transformation, everything was a building block leading to where I am now. I'm basically using all of these skills as I explore new opportunities in monitoring and evaluation. So, back to you. Let's look at some lucrative industries that you can consider for the future. Sustainability and green jobs. That's where I'm headed, child. Yeah, that's where I'm headed. But for this particular space, you would look at opportunities in renewable energy, waste management, sustainability. And by the way, sustainability is not limited to environment like in the traditional sense. Transformation is also there, inclusivity is also there. Think of people management, data science and AI. So, this would be machine learning and AI. They are currently in demand at the moment because of all of these technological advancements that have taken place. So, it always goes back to pestle. What are the innovations that are happening technologically at the moment? Healthcare and well being. I think COVID-19 created a surge in the wellness industry. It's so interesting that a pandemic, I mean, not really, I guess it happens, but that particular pandemic created a huge, huge wellness industry. And of course, it took advantage of people's desperation, vulnerabilities, paranoia, but also at the same time, it expanded this love and desire for people to get well, people practicing wellness practices on a daily, people being interested in mental health, not just physical health. So I think the wellness industry has boomed. And I am a huge fan of this because I'm a wellness advocate for sure. So there's a lot to do in that space. And healthcare professionals are not only doctors or surgeons, there's so much in between. So think of those things, consider it, and we'll see how it goes. As we wrap up this episode, I hope you've gained valuable insights into the art of career pivoting. Whether you're feeling burned out, unfulfilled, or simply curious about new opportunities, it's never too late to change course. We've talked about the importance of adaptability, personal reflection, and setting clear goals. And hopefully, my own story of pivoting between sectors has shown you that your career isn't a linear journey, but a dynamic one. Remember, pivoting is not about starting over, but about leveraging your past experiences and skill sets in new and exciting ways. Whether you choose to continue in your field or make a bold leap into something new, the key is to stay curious, stay informed, and trust that your journey is leading you exactly where you need to go. And I hope you feel more empowered to take that next step, whatever it may be. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Girl Bossing Under Duress. If you found today's conversation meaningful, why not keep it going? Join our online community of fierce, like-minded individuals where we continue to uplift, support, and empower each other. You can find us on X and Instagram at GBUD_podcast and on Facebook and TikTok at Girl Bossing Under Duress. Want more exclusive content and special offers? Subscribe to our weekly newsletter at girlbossingunderduress.substack.com and be the first to get insights, resources, and more to help you boss up in all areas of your life. Remember, your journey doesn't end here. Let's keep growing together.